Story 1. You can drink while you drive without attracting attention if you empty a can of soda and refill it with beer. Story 2. From my mom. When you're in a new situation, be cautious of anyone who is overly nice to you. Anyone decent already has friends and doesn't need you. They might be nice to the new person because something is wrong with them. I asked her about this as an adult, and she recounted a work situation where someone was trying to involve her in office politics. I inquired if she believed the same rules applied to children. She thought for a moment and replied, "Probably not." Story 3. To always hug relatives. I have always disliked being hugged, and most of my relatives smell unpleasant. A hug, high five, or fist bump would be much better, or at least a mandatory handshake at a minimum. Story 4. Hide things from your other parent. Mom would make us conceal how much she was spending or anything she would buy for us. It turned out she was wasting $45,000 a year on unnecessary items. She also used the silent treatment to punish her children and guilt us into disliking the other parent. Story 5. You always have to be the bigger person. That cost me dearly, and I will be telling my son to show people the version of himself they have earned. Story 6. To prioritize everyone else's feelings over her own. I don't want my daughter to grow up putting her needs aside for the comfort of others. Story 7. This may sound unconventional, but my mother told us that we would go to hell for committing various acts. I remember being so afraid of burning in hell as a small child. I believe it prevented me from connecting with religion because I was more concerned about avoiding eternal punishment than actually understanding God. When I was 10, I admitted to a Sunday school teacher that I thought God was unkind. She asked me why, and I told her the truth. It seems harsh to punish people eternally for a temporary sin. She responded with, "Your mother is mistaken. I believe some people attempt to control small children with religion, but it often backfires. I have 2 teenagers and a 10-year-old, and I have never threatened them with religion or pushed it onto them." Story 8. If you are not bleeding or physically hurt, you should not be crying. I was told that since kindergarten. Story 9. If you can't find love at home, go find it elsewhere. It's not bad advice. It's just not something you tell a child directly. Story 10. You must show affection to older relatives, even if you do not want to, because they are family. Older relatives deserve respect due to their age and relationship to you. You are expected to share details about your personal life with acquaintances as they are family members. The personal information you have confided to me will likely be shared with friends and extended family, regardless of your requests for privacy. Family often disregards personal boundaries simply because they are family. Story 11. Impulsive behavior can draw unwanted attention to oneself. I grew up in the loudest house on the block. Story 12. Just ignore the bullies and they will leave you alone. However, this approach often does not work. It may lead the child to internalize the bullying, causing them to hate and blame themselves. Story 13. Evangelicalism and rapture culture can be truly terrifying for a toddler and young child. Heaven forbid you question anything. Story 14. I will not teach my kids to express their anxiety in art and watch the artwork burn in an open fire to eliminate it. Story 15. How to express my emotions. Thankfully, I have snarky comments on Reddit as an outlet for whatever I happen to be feeling. Story 16. That your absolute best isn't enough. You must always forgive and forget, even when the person hasn't shown any growth or change. Story 17. One thing my parents taught me that I probably won't teach my children is to be overly nice. While I will encourage them to be decent people who do good things, I don't want them to be pushovers whom others can easily take advantage of due to being too naive. Story 18. Parents, teachers, coaches, or any adult in authority knows everything and should not be questioned. It is considered rude to do anything other than comply and agree unconditionally. Asking why is deemed inappropriate and forbidden. Nothing is open for discussion. Whatever they say is final, and your opinion does not matter. Story 19. Forcing my child to meet with another child they do not get along with, simply because the parents are close and want them to be best friends, might lead to unwanted outcomes. It is important to respect the feelings of both children, who clearly do not enjoy each other's company. My mother's best friend had a son 2 years older than me, and he was a bully. They believed we would grow out of it and become a couple, making our mom's legal family. Years later, I discovered his father was a major alcoholic and abusive, which helped explain much of his behavior. This boy hated me, and I felt the same way. He was rude and obnoxious, and as a small girl, I was unable to defend myself. I will never force my children to be around people they are not comfortable with. Story 20. You are a sinner. The punishment for sin is death. Your only possibility for salvation is Jesus Christ. Story 21. Screaming is a sign of wanting attention. My father is loud and would often shout at us for even the smallest things, like a moved plate or a different type of music, especially if it was too loud. Story 22. You are overdramatic. Valid reactions to mistreatment are not overreactions. Crying is normal, especially for children. Bottling up your emotions until you unleash them at inappropriate moments because you were triggered by something is not. Story 23. Whoever asks will be skipped, or in my native language, we've racked word over Jesligen. I want my children to speak up and ask if they need something. Story 24. To respect elders, they do not deserve preferential treatment. Everyone deserves the same level of respect. Young people have not done anything to warrant disrespect or to be taken for granted. Story 25. Children are often treated like pets that can be showcased to friends, rather than being recognized as individuals with their own hopes and dreams. Story 26. You don't open the fridge or cupboards to get a snack unless you ask first. I never had kids, but if I did, I swore they would feel welcome in my kitchen. Story 27. By the age of 12, a child becomes who they are, and it can be challenging to provide assistance. My sister, who has schizophrenia, could have benefited from support rather than being resigned to the label of a wild child, and largely left to her own devices. Story 28. My dad taught me many great things, but my mom taught me what not to do. She was difficult, and I had to navigate my upbringing on my own. My children will never know what it's like to be terrified for their lives because of drinking and driving. It is not acceptable to consume alcohol and drive around with your kids. The fear of that experience is burned in my memory forever. Story 29. Keep your head down, work hard, and never complain. Your supervisor will notice and reward you generously. Story 30. They often said, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. They would get upset whenever I approached them with a problem, responding with questions like, why are you telling me this? Or get over it. They also gave poor advice. This experience made me someone who struggles to speak up when something is wrong. I do not feel comfortable confiding in my parents. I essentially stopped doing so by middle school, and to this day, they are confused about why I do not trust them with my issues. I want my future children to feel that they can talk to me about their problems. It is difficult growing up feeling emotionally isolated. Story 31. You need to finish all the food on your plate. It is an unhealthy eating habit that is difficult to break after being ingrained in you. Story 32. Religion was imposed on us through Catholic schooling and the Scouts group we belonged to, which was run by a Christian. We had to attend Sunday school. Admittedly, there was some pressure from my father's side of the family, but I believe we should allow kids to form their own opinions on such matters. Story 33. They will face eternal consequences if they do not follow the rules outlined in a book from thousands of years ago. Story 34. I will teach her, but not explicitly. My mom came into my room when I was 9 and threw me a condom, saying, if you're going to have sex, use this. My daughter knows all about periods and yeast infections, but she will probably receive a less invasive talk about sex. Story 35. Use caution, especially well-informed caution, in making major life decisions. However, being too risk-averse is extremely limiting to one's enjoyment of life and chances of success. My father tried to teach me the opposite. Avoid anything that contains an element of risk. I rejected that notion, which helps explain why I married early and remain married 48 years later. as well as why we purchased our first house at a fairly young age. That house quickly became more valuable in monetary terms than the house in which I was raised. Of course, I was aided by the exceptionally favorable economy of my generation, but rejecting my father's advice was key to capitalizing on that favorable economy. I would never pass on my father's self-limiting advice to my children. A recent solo backpacking trip from Toronto to Tierra del Fuego was not the most fiscally sound decision a 24-year-old might make. My father would have advised strongly against it, but we fully supported her, emotionally at least. She paid for the trip and strongly believed that she made a sound, if slightly daring, choice. The slightly daring part makes it all the better. She actively pursues life, as opposed to passively waiting to see what may happen, which I find to be an admirable and useful trait. She is also remarkably successful in her academics, possibly aided by her seize-the-day approach to life. This approach seems counterintuitive, but it allows her to embrace each day's study without the undue burden of worrying about whether events beyond her control will negatively affect her career possibilities, which I believe to be highly unlikely. Story 36. Do you have a problem with how I'm raising you? Go to a therapist. Mom, being lazy and weaponizing incompetence is normal and funny. Dad, a bit of context. My dad never put in any effort and is fine with being mediocre while showing no emotion. He never expressed love or affection. Then he cheated on my mom, left for his girlfriend's house and kids. When we were at his place, we had to sleep in a cramped room, barely feeling accepted. Wrote her emails in tones that would make the calmest person angry. Refused to pay for many things. Showed signs that he didn't want us, his own children. Gaslit us by saying, "Your mom is forcing you to stay with me." Hate her. What my mom said came after she felt completely burnt out. However, she apologized and expressed that she felt like a bad mother. Story 37. My mother taught me how not to be a parent. I pretty much raised myself or was passed around to others. The story gets much worse from here. Let's just say I made a conscious decision not to have children myself. Story 38. You only have to focus on school, achieving excellent grades, and excelling in everything. That caused me depression, anxiety, and self-esteem issues. Story 39. You have to believe me no matter what. Prove they can trust you. Do not lie and then demand they believe. Story 40. It would be much shorter to list the things I want to teach my son that my parents taught me. I can't think of anything. Well, loosely speaking, I want him to appreciate nature. All my positive and safe memories of my dad are outdoors, but not all those experiences were positive or safe. Story 41. Respect your elders. However, some older individuals can be difficult. I am considered part of that group. Story 42. To act like them is to have little to no respect for those close to you, such as family. In my last relationship, I started some self-reflection and personal work. I noticed how poorly I was treating my ex, how little I respected him, and questioned why I did. Then, I observed my parents interact and noticed similar behaviors. I quickly got my act together and changed my behavior and communication. My ex had the same issue. He learned negative behavior from his parental figures. However, he lacked self-awareness and refused to admit his faults. He was also much more disrespectful. When I have children in the future, I now realize they will observe the relationship their parents had and learn how to communicate in many ways from them. I will strive to show the good, bad, and ugly sides, always keeping respect in mind. Story 43. Job satisfaction is important. It's a job and it pays. You just have to do it. I stayed at a job for 2 years longer than I should have, and it significantly impacted my mental and physical health because it paid. I would have been much happier working at Trader Joe's than at that job. Story 44. You should think everything through carefully before doing it to ensure you do it right and avoid mistakes. An unspoken rule in my family, rather than something they deliberately taught, sounds benign on the surface. However, it led to me becoming an anxiety-riddled adult who is terrified of making any mistakes. If I do, it must mean I didn't plan well enough beforehand. I need a lot of guidance when learning new things before I feel confident trying them on my own. If I ever decide to become a parent, I will allow my children to make more mistakes, learn from them, and be stronger than I am as a result. I never learned how to learn from mistakes. Story 45. Staying in an abusive relationship is not acceptable. I will ensure my two daughters leave any relationship at the first sign of abuse. Story 46. My dad was very old-fashioned. He made it clear to me that women belong at home and that it's important to keep their husbands and children happy above everything else. This puts a lot of pressure on me as I navigate marriage and motherhood. Every little thing that goes wrong or if I make a mistake comes with a lot of guilt. I will never teach that to my boys. Story 47. Your children are not more important than your wife. I'm not allowed to live in the same city or visit more than once a year because his wife can't stand the idea of me. Keep in mind, we met when I was 8. She also refuses to let him visit me, including for 2 college graduations, one of which was a master's degree. At least he takes care of me financially. This is part of the reason I will never have children, in my opinion. This situation is difficult, and I know I would make the same choice honestly. Story 48. Parents are not always right and can be questioned. Everyone has flaws, everyone makes mistakes sometimes, and even parents need to be open-minded and willing to have honest discussions. Despite being nearly 40, my father treats me as though I am foolish and uses personal insults against me in my own home if I disagree with him, even over small matters like not wanting yogurt for breakfast. I dislike yogurt, but he is welcome to have it. I even bought some for him in preparation for his visit. I do not want to eat it, and he becomes incredibly angry about it. It is very frustrating. When it comes to bigger issues like politics or religion, he remains upset with me years later for being baptized, as he is an atheist. I never tried to convert him or involve him in any way. I simply sent him a nice picture of me in my baptism dress, and he reacted strongly. I understand that he does not intend to hurt me. It is just his personality, but it is very difficult, especially since he behaves differently in public or when others are present. When his wife or my husband are around, he is the nicest person. But when we are alone, I feel like I have to walk on eggshells. I love him dearly, and I know he does not do it on purpose, but it is very hurtful, and I do not know how to make it stop. If I ever have children of my own, I want them to feel comfortable being themselves, even if it means they do things differently than I do or have opinions that vary from mine. Story 49. Don't get a job. Wait for the government to take care of you. Don't finish school. Just drop out. This is how my siblings and I were raised. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.